Welcome to Kitchen Chat. This is where we sample the talents of the most notorious chefs, home cooks, foodies, and celebrities that sizzle. Get ready for a culinary journey that you won't find anywhere else. Here's the host of Kitchen Chat, Margaret McSweeney.
Hello, dear foodie friends, and welcome to Kitchen Chat. This is your co-host and founder, Margaret McSweeney, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. I am so excited about today's guest. Such an honor to have this icon in the kitchen. Well, she needs no introduction. Mary Sue Milliken is one of the founders of Women Chefs and Restaurateurs, a pioneer within the culinary industry, a true luminary, award-winning, all of the accolades. I'll make sure that I post her bio for you. But welcome, Mary Sue, to Kitchen Chat.
Thank you, Margaret. It's so great to be here. And, it's been a long sort of a lull during the pandemic when a lot of us kind of had to rethink everything. So it's great to be back doing podcasts and all kinds of things.
Oh, well, it's truly an honor to have you on, Chef. And I'd love for the viewers and listeners to hear your culinary journey story. What was the catalyst that got you so interested in Mexican cuisine? How did that happen? Can you share with us?
Well, sure. I loved my home ec class in 8th grade. And they don't even teach it anymore, I don't think. But I just really enjoyed being in the kitchen. My mom was a great cook. I ended up moving to the south side of Chicago and going to chef school when I was 17. And then later on, working in French restaurants in Chicago, Le Perroquet. And then I worked in France for a few years. And I actually met Susan Feniger, my business partner of 42 years now, working at Le Perroquet in Chicago. And we both went to France around the same time, came back, and decided we would open up a little restaurant together. We didn't know where or how or where we'd get the money, but we ended up on Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles, next to an eyeglass shop that had opened a little cafe but didn't really know how to run it. And so we took that on and became their partners, and started cooking food that we loved. But it was, although we were very classically French trained, we really loved food that was a little more rustic and more authentic, or just more, bursting with flavors. And so Mexican food, of course, was one of those cuisines that we were in love with. And we also worked with so many Mexican people in kitchens in Chicago and in Los Angeles. We were very inspired by what they would cook for family meal. And we would drive all the way to East Los Angeles to get our favorite carnitas tacos and bring them back as a treat for the team. So when we moved from our little tiny 900 square foot cafe to our bigger city restaurant, it was called City Cafe, and we moved to a bigger quarters, 5,000 square feet, and that we still had that little location. So we decided to open up a little taco stand. And we went to Mexico and drove around in a little VW Bug and ate at the markets and visited some of the families of some of the employees that had worked for us, and it was really a great way to kind of get immersed in Mexican food and culture and come back with some great ideas.
Wow. You have spoken so many wonderful words within that, key phrases. First of all, Paris. Tell me about your experience in Paris.
Well, I was there 79, 80, and I worked in a restaurant called Olympe, Restaurant d'Olympe, and it was owned by a couple who were French Moroccan, and she was the chef, Dominique Namias, and he ran the front of the house. And it was really a great experience for me because it was the first time I kind of saw a woman in the kitchen who was very feminine. You know, up until that time, I was sort of, cut my hair really short, wore my steel-toed shoes, tried to act like a boy or a man, and tried to just, fit in, because there weren't very many of us in the kitchen in the 70s. And she was really very feminine. She would work all day in, chef clothes, but she would go home and come back at night in like a low cut sort of white V-neck t-shirt and a big white skirt and big high heels, white high heels. And she would expedite in the kitchen, but then, she'd also go to the dining room, and it was a tiny little kitchen. There were only 5 of us, and I worked there for a little over a year, and it was really great experience for me. It was a great role model for me to really, be able to, just combine femininity with being in the kitchen.
I love that. Now, while you were in Paris, were you able to meet other culinarians? I mean, with Anne Willen and other wonderful, wonderful women.
Yes. I wish I had, but to be honest, I was so busy working. I just barely had time to, go. I worked 6 or 7 shifts a week, and I didn't really get paid very much. So I wasn't able to meet, a lot of the people that I've met since then, like Dory Greenspan and Anne Willen, all those people I've met since, luckily. And the Parisians were very, in the 70s, they were very unique and very kind of not particularly welcoming. So it took me a long time to want to go back. It took me 20 years before I went back to France. And now I love it. But I think at the time I wanted to, any traveling that I was going to do after I returned, I wanted to go to, Southeast Asia and Japan and China, and I wanted to go to India and, Turkey. And then the first time I remember going back to Paris with my husband for our 1-year wedding anniversary, I had a great time. And I feel like France has changed a lot since then and become more welcoming by far.
Absolutely. And as our foodie friends know, Paris will always have a special place in my heart. I was just there this year to celebrate my 60th birthday, which was very, very special. And on a bittersweet note, that is where my father passed away at the Charles de Gaulle Airport in 1990. I know. So it was bittersweet being there, but a celebration of his life. And also his joy, because he found such joy not only in Paris, but with gathering in the kitchen and cooking and sharing meals and understanding the different cultures. So I would love to hear what brings you joy in the kitchen.
That's so interesting, because I think, like your father, I don't know where he grew up, but I grew up in Michigan, and I remember, working and living in Chicago, and then the catalyst that took me to Paris at the beginning was a breakup with my boyfriend, and I thought if I needed to get at least 2,000 miles away. I don't know why, but also I was just very interested in doing an apprenticeship and really learning from the masters. But when I arrived in France, it was the first time in my life as a 20-year-old or 22-year-old that I really felt like, wow, these people, I fit in here. They care about food. When they finish breakfast, they think about their next meal, lunch. When they finish lunch, they think about dinner, and every meal is special, and every meal is an opportunity to gather and, relax and restore and be together. And I think it's interesting that your father loved it too, because it's very reaffirming when you are obsessed with food to be surrounded by others who are very much like-minded. And I guess for me, joy comes from, I really like cooking for other people. I mean, every day that I don't cook, which there are not very many of them, but when I don't cook, I feel a little unfulfilled. Like I haven't really, had as much fun. So I basically, and now and during the pandemic, I've been sort of keeping a notebook of all the menus that I want to cook, the new things I want to try, because I just love it. I just love cooking. Like it brings me more joy than anything.
I love this, and I am understanding this joyful journey even more that my dad had through you. So thank you. This is just amazing. So you mentioned dishes you're wanting to try. What are some of those, if you can share?
Well, I'm a very adventurous eater, and I love all kinds of food. But I think I think for me, I travel through my cooking and my culinary explorations. So here in Los Angeles, I am blessed with an amazing kind of multicultural city where I can go to a Chinese grocery, a Thai market. I can go to an Indian grocery store at the end of my block, or Japanese grocery store. So I often will, think ahead, like about Indian food, and I'll think, okay, here's the dishes that I used to crave, and I still crave, and I haven't had in a long time. I did a lot of this during the pandemic because, we weren't open for several months. And then when we did reopen, our team was doing such a great job, and Susan and I, being the elder statesman of the company and not wanting to get sick, we were able to stay home quite a lot. So all the food I was craving that we all used to go out and eat when we'd go out for Chinese or Korean or whatever. So then I started just cooking those at home often. And it's now become sort of a rhythm for me where I'll think ahead about what I want to explore next. Although I also go into the restaurant and cook with our team whenever we're going to revamp the specials, and that's right now. Socolo in Santa Monica is our newest restaurant. We opened just at the end of 2019, like a couple weeks before the end of the year, and then had a really good run, and then it kind of rejiggered everything. But we're California Mexican and enjoy really having fun with that, with that team. So I cook there a lot too.
Oh, I love that. I was just recently on the red carpet interviewing for the James Beard Awards in Chicago. And it was just a celebration truly of world cuisine that is here in the United States. And LA particularly, you do have great access. But I love that the flavor profile is changing so much within the country. And I love to hear that you're cooking all that. And a big shout out and thank you to our mutual friend, Chef Katie Chen, who brought us together. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the Beard Awards, I'm on the board of trustees of the Beard Foundation. And I am so proud of the work we've done to really expand the horizons of our members and our supporters, and really look at all the beauty and in the culinary richness that our country has to offer, and really celebrate more than just the very, very expensive and the very, very fancy places, but also celebrate just excellence at every level.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought it up about the James Beard, you being part of that. It's exciting to see all of the positive changes happening within there. And you could palpably feel this on the red carpet as everyone celebrated. So that's very exciting. Another question. You mentioned you've been with your wonderful business partner, Susan Finnegar, for 42 years. Any advice for fellow female entrepreneurs on how to develop business partnerships, how to keep them going strong and profitably?
Well, it's a great question. I think, being a partner we probably all have the DNA to be partners. It's not that different from a marriage, really. But I think a lot of partnerships don't last. And I think the reason ours has lasted is that, we are both very committed collaborators. We really believe in our hearts that, the sum of the parts is much greater than, just adding 1 and 1 equals 4, not 2, so what we're able to create together is far better than either of us could create on our own. And so we constantly see the value in that. And then I think, like any relationship, there's all kinds of, hurdles and bumpy roads and, times when you feel like, oh, I'm going to kill her or, I don't know if this is worth it. And I think through all that, we've just been really open with each other and allowed each other to grow in whatever direction is going to fulfill us. So that's the other thing, is you can always count on change. So whether it's your marriage or your business partner, or if you own your restaurant or your little business all to yourself, you got to keep changing. Nothing's the same, nothing. So, as much as we want it to be the same, and we feel more safe when we can count on it being the same, it's just never going to be that way because things just keep changing.
Yes, it is not, is it inert? It is constant and changing, and you have to adapt and be flexible. The great lessons. I think you could write a business book as well. If you think that.
Maybe. Well, I definitely learned by trial and error, because there have been plenty of times when, and that's the other thing about a great partner, is when we're really succeeding and things are on a roll and things are great, that's when we think, I'm not sure I need a partner. But when it's a huge failure that you're facing, which is happening all the time, not all the time, but it definitely happens at times, that's when, for me and Susan, we've pulled together and been so grateful for our partnership, because that's when I think we most need each other and we most appreciate each other.
Oh, I love hearing that. And kudos to you and women entrepreneurs. It's very important. And for those of you who are women entrepreneurs out there, stay encouraged and be flexible, it sounds like, and expect change. So you, as I was saying earlier, you are a pioneer within this culinary movement of Mexican cuisine. What would you say, and you continue to be a pioneer as well, but how would you mentor those up-and-coming culinary pioneers? What would be your best advice to them?
Well, I've started actually a new nonprofit here in Los Angeles, and we've expanded to Washington, D.C., and I do a lot of mentoring. It's called Regarding Her, and it's all about advancing women's equity for food and drink entrepreneurs. And I think that there's so much nowadays. And the young people that are coming up are brilliant. They're smart. They are, incredible with technology. They are so quick. And a lot of the women I work with are actually career changers. They came out of, say, investment banking and got into a restaurant, or came out of grant writing and got into catering, or, so I think it's really interesting that has changed. The landscape has changed. So there are women who are very skilled in other ways, and they're bringing those skills to this industry. When I was coming up through the ranks, we were all pretty much, that was all we'd ever done. And so it was really different. But I guess I would say that, I would encourage women who are pioneers in the industry today to just continue to explore, to go and to get more and more specific and granular about what they're doing. And because I think there's an appetite out there within the public to learn more about, it used to be that, Mexican cuisine was tacos and enchiladas and, burritos maybe, or a quesadilla. Then, now we're looking at, the food of Oaxaca versus the food of the Yucatan versus, Mexico City, which is really, exploded with culinary kind of innovation. And so I would just say to really dive in deep and to get a lot of experience that you can then, use to delight your customers and to educate them and to get them more connected to the world out there. So it's a little bit, I think food is such a great connector of all of us. I mean, clearly we all have to eat every day. So, it is sort of a universal language that we speak, and understanding each other in this global economy, the global world, really having empathy for all different people all over the globe and what they're going through, I think can really be learned through food in a big way.
I love that. And that was such a key lesson my dad would always teach me. So this is just so beautiful to hear this from you. Well, one person I wish I had the opportunity to meet, and I never did because I got into the culinary journey much later, Julia Child. Can you share some special memories about Julia Child and how the two of you connected?
Oh my gosh. Julia came into our very first little cafe about a year after we opened. And she was such a champion for me and Susan. She loved our food, loved what we were doing, and was just so, supportive and always trying to find ways to introduce us to people. And she came out to Santa Barbara for the winters when she was still living in Boston. And so we would see her, she'd pop in every once in a while. And, when she invited us to be on for one of her series called Cooking with Master Chefs, that was a huge joy for us. We filmed it at my house, and she was at my house for 3 days in a row from early in the morning to late at night. And we cooked all day together. She sat on the couch and took notes. And, she was just, I learned so much from her about not just about food, but about how to be, how to be a celebrity in a way that's very, down to earth and available to everybody. I think a lot of times I'm pretty shy, really. And a lot of times shy people come off as being like, snooty or standoffish. And watching Julia with her fans, like we'd have book signings right next to each other. Of course, she'd have a line around the block and Susan and I'd have like 4 people, but in those early days, especially. But watching her, she would stop with every single person and ask one personal question of them, no matter how long her line was. I have another friend who does that, David Sedaris. He'll sign books until 4 a.m. if he has to, but he connects with each and every one of his fans and readers. And I think that's, I just think I learned that in a way, and it made me feel so, lucky and fortunate to have had that kind of at an early age, had met Julia and watched how she interacted with people. And it gave me a lot of courage to, be more than just, sort of a shy wallflower.
Oh, thank you for sharing that story. I love that. I feel like we should say the joy of Julia. I mean, she
Yeah.
truly exemplified and lived that. Oh, thanks for sharing. Well, do you have any up and coming projects or anything? I'm going to make sure we have a link to Regarding Her. Is there a website for that?
Yes, regardingherfood.org. What's interesting, because like you said earlier, I was a founder of WCR, Women Chefs and Restaurateurs, and I'm on the board of trustees of the Beard Foundation. But what's different about Regarding Her that I'm really excited about is we're putting deep roots into the community, and we're touching consumers and women operators and up and coming women leaders and decision makers in the food and drink business. So if you go to the website, you'll see there's a map of LA County, and you can find all the women owned restaurants and food shops that you could, choose to support. And then we've just expanded to DC. I'd love to come to Chicago someday soon.
Yeah.
I really want more people to know about us and what we're doing, because I think it's going to be we're going to accelerate gender parity in my industry in a way that I expected back in the 70s. By the time I was 64, I thought we would be a lot farther along. And, which is why I pour myself into this nonprofit work every day, and I'm really excited about accelerating it.
Oh, I love that. And any other projects are you working on? A cookbook? You already have the restaurant. We'll have to send a link to.
We do. We're working on a really cool thing out in Palm Springs. We're going to open in about 9 months. We're going to do all the food service for a retirement community for people 60 and older, for the LGBTQ plus community, called Living Out. And Susan and I are doing all the menus, and we're hiring all the staff, and it'll be like a clubhouse and a community of condominiums that people own, and there'll be pools and bocce ball courts and all kinds of fun things. I think, and we would like to do this in other locations all around the country. And I think it's a really fun kind of thing. It's a great thing for us to do, in our 60s, because we're looking at that. We're also opening more restaurants in Vegas. We're opening in the T-Mobile Stadium. We have 2 concepts, Barbecue Mexicana and Pachamamas, which is sort of a Peruvian skewer concept. We're doing at many of the sports arenas in Vegas and also in LA. And our restaurant in Vegas is going to turn 24 this year, which is a long time. And that's Border Grill at Mandalay Bay. And I was just there in Vegas yesterday. I actually love going there. I love the team we have, and we just keep growing and evolving and changing, because that's the only way to stay relevant, really. And that's for us, that's kind of enough, I think, for the moment. Susan and I are also kind of working on a succession plan where our team can become owners of our company, and we can slowly kind of, guide them, but also invest in their projects so that they will have some of the same opportunities we had, over the last 40 plus years. And I think that's kind of been an exciting thing to contemplate and to look at, and it keeps us really busy. So it's, the pandemic actually was a blessing for me in terms of teaching me about, as a founder, you tend to be very attached to every little thing about your company. And the pandemic just taught me that if I step away and get out of my team's way, they actually are incredible. I don't have to do it all. I can actually let go a little bit more. And so I think that's been great. And they've been happier, and I've been really happy about, being able to spend time on regarding her and to spend time with the succession planning and coming up with ways to keep everybody kind of engaged and growing. And so there's we still work like crazy hours and enjoy ourselves, but it's just not, we keep reinventing ourselves to be working in a different way.
I love that. And as you said, we have to always change. So you are also a pioneer in that, teaching us all how to change and adapt. What a journey that continues. So much fun. So I always like to end Kitchen Chat with the top 3 tips from our guest that you would share for the home cook. The top 3 tips.
Wow. Well, okay, I would say shop at a farmer's market whenever you can. And what I do is after I shop at my farmer's market, I usually go Sunday mornings. I come home and I do a fair amount of kind of washing, and I have a whole system around how I store things so they stay very, very fresh for at least a week or 10 days sometimes. And so I'd say, first of all, the ingredients. So do your best to bring into the house only the best. And let's see. Another tip, I would say, as far as flavor goes, I'm always trying to balance salty, sweet, spicy, and bitter. And I think all those flavors really, in every dish that we do, like I just made the other night a bel puri, which is an Indian salad, and it has like sour tamarind and spicy serrano chilies, and then it has it has sweetness. You always have to put a little palm sugar in there, but it's not overly sweet. Sometimes in American versions of ethnic food, they go a little too far on the sweet side, I think. But I think for everything that you're cooking, whether it's, a steak or a fancy, composed dish of many, many different ingredients, it's just coming back to that idea about the balance of those flavors and texture, because everything for me, I always want to have, a crunch on top of something smooth and creamy, or, I want to keep the palate really interested that way. And I guess I don't know, I'm a real health nut. So the third thing I would say is try to take the time to eat 80% plant-based. It takes more time, but I feel so much better and happier, and my waistline's happier. And the older I get, the even more important is to eat more plant-based food. And even, to feed your body, it's fuel. So you want to look good and feel good, make sure you put good food in there, and, and lots of plants.
I love that. And I am trying to go towards a plant-based lifestyle. Any quick dish that you would recommend? You said plant-based will take more time. What would be?
I think prepping vegetables is just time consuming. Getting a piece of protein, fish, chicken, whatever it is, it'll satisfy your need for food, and it'll satisfy your hunger fast. And it's easy to work with. Vegetables just take a little longer. So that's why I try to, on Sundays, get a lot of things prepped ahead. I would say, oftentimes, it's summertime, so I'm eating a lot of salads. I'll eat like a bacon, lettuce, and tomato salad. It'll be 80% plants and some bacon, because, who doesn't love bacon? And I'll put some croutons in there, so I won't be too heavy on the carbs, because, the older I get, I think I want to eat carbs, and I want to eat fat, and I want to eat protein, but I want to eat those in moderation. That's another thing Julia was very good at teaching people, how to be moderate about it. Everything's good in moderation. So, I would say, yeah, make a BLT salad and some croutons in there. And that's a great summer one. I also do a tuna salad with lots of croutons, and I always put anchovies in. But basically, you don't need more than 20% to really, make all those vegetables taste so good. My goal is to make vegetarian or nearly vegetarian food irresistible to a carnivore.
I love that.
I think a good chef, any good chef, ought to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, Chef Mary Sue Milliken, thank you so much for being on Kitchen Chat. Dear food, sure we have links to all of her delicious restaurants, her wonderful organization regarding her food.org, and some great things ahead. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret. It's been a pleasure. And I wish I would have had a chance to meet your dad. He sounds like an incredible guy. But hopefully our paths will cross in person someday soon.
Absolutely. And dear foodie friends, thank you for joining me on this culinary journey with Kitchen Chat. Please check out all the great things with Chef Mary Sue Milliken. And always remember to take a moment and savor the day.